The acclaimed historic idea of philosopher kings was supposedly the key to creating a perfect society. Let me convince you why, or why not. Imagine a world where our leaders are chosen for their wisdom instead of popularity. Would that change the way our society functions? Would that be an actual upgrade or a decisive step backwards? This is a thought-provoking question that takes us back to the times of Plato and his seminal work, The Republic. Plato proposed an interesting concept, a radical departure from the norm. He envisioned a society where rulers aren't selected through ballot boxes based on their charm or persuasive speeches. Instead, these leaders, these philosopher kings, as he termed them, would ascend the throne through a different path. A path paved with rigorous intellectual training, a path that cultivates wisdom. These philosopher kings, Plato argued, would be better equipped to guide society, to make decisions that benefit all, not just a select few. This, dear listeners, is the idea of philosopher kings. Now let's dive into the depths of this idea and its implications. In Plato's Republic, philosopher kings are presented as the ideal rulers. But why? What makes them so special? Well, let's delve into the heart of Plato's proposal. Philosophers, according to Plato, are lovers of wisdom. They are driven by the relentless pursuit of truth and are not swayed by the trappings of power or wealth. In Plato's vision, the philosopher king is the epitome of wisdom, possessing a deep understanding of the forms, the abstract entities representing the highest and most fundamental kind of reality. But wisdom isn't the only quality that makes these philosopher kings stand out. They are dedicated to the common good above their own personal interests. Plato argued that these leaders, with their intellectual prowess and moral integrity, would be immune to corruption. They would not be tempted by greed or power, but would rather focus on creating a society that benefits all its members. In addition to wisdom and selflessness, philosopher kings are characterized by their intellectual capabilities. Plato believed in the power of knowledge and reasoned that those who understand the forms are best suited to make decisions for society. The philosopher king, in his view, would be a kind of enlightened despot, a ruler who uses his superior knowledge and understanding to govern justly and wisely. Now, the concept of philosopher kings may seem idealistic, and it certainly is. But it's based on Plato's belief in the potential of human beings to rise above their base desires and act for the greater good. He saw in philosophers the potential for a kind of leadership that goes beyond the usual power dynamics, a leadership based on wisdom, selflessness, and intellectual capability. Plato believed that philosopher kings, with their wisdom and selflessness, would create a just and harmonious society, but not everyone agrees. And that's where the debate begins. Is Plato's vision of philosopher kings an enlightened approach to governance, or is it a guise for authoritarian rule and elitism? Keep watching as we delve deeper into this philosophical conundrum. Critics of Plato's philosopher kings argue that this model promotes authoritarian rule and elitism, but how so? Well, let's start with the notion of authoritarian rule. In Plato's model, philosopher kings are not elected by the people. They are chosen based on their superior wisdom and understanding of the forms. This lack of democratic process could potentially lead to authoritarian rule. The philosopher kings, existing in their realm of higher understanding, may become detached from the realities of the society they govern. They might make decisions that are in line with their own wisdom, but not necessarily in the best interest of the people. This detachment could foster an environment where the ruled have little to no say in their governance, fostering a system that leans towards authoritarianism. Now let's tackle the criticism of elitism. Plato's philosopher kings are by definition a select few. They are individuals who have proven themselves superior in wisdom and understanding. In a society where all are supposed to be equal, this inherently creates a divide. The philosopher kings, with their superior knowledge, are placed on a pedestal, creating a class of elites. This could potentially lead to a society where the value of an individual is determined by their intellectual capabilities rather than their moral virtues or contributions to society. Moreover, Plato's model doesn't provide a clear path for the ascension of new philosopher kings. What happens when a philosopher king passes away? Who deems the next philosopher worthy of the crown? Without a clear succession plan, this could lead to power struggles and further exacerbate the divide between the elites and the common people. These criticisms suggest that Plato's philosopher kings may not be the ideal rulers after all. But is there any merit to these criticisms? Well, that's a question we'll continue to explore. But one thing is certain, the concept of philosopher kings, with its potential for authoritarian rule and elitism, continues to spark intriguing debates in philosophical circles and perhaps gives us food for thought about our own systems of governance. Now, let's consider how Plato's philosopher kings may or may not be relevant to today's democratic societies. In a world where popularity often trumps wisdom in the selection of leaders, Plato's concept of philosopher kings raises some compelling points. One could argue that the philosopher king, with their focus on knowledge and justice, might make more informed decisions than a leader chosen for charisma alone. They'd be less likely to be swayed by public opinion and more likely to make decisions for the greater good. Yet there's a flip side to this coin. The philosopher king model is steeped in elitism, and that's a bitter pill to swallow in a society that values equality. By definition, a philosopher king is a member of an intellectual elite, chosen not by the people, but by other elites. This rings of authoritarianism, and in a democratic society, it's a hard sell. Moreover, in an age where information is at everyone's fingertips, the idea of a single, all-knowing leader seems somewhat outdated. Today's societies are complex and diverse, and it's hard to imagine one person, however wise, being able to understand and represent everyone's interests. So there are certainly pros and cons to Plato's philosopher kings. On one hand, their wisdom could potentially lead to better decision-making. On the other hand, their elitism and potential for authoritarian rule raise serious concerns. It seems that the debate on Plato's philosopher kings and their relevance to today's democracy is far from over. As we have seen, Plato's idea of philosopher kings raises thought-provoking questions about leadership and governance. We've delved into the depths of this concept, dissected the criticisms of perceived authoritarianism and elitism, and pondered its relevance, or lack thereof, in our current democratic systems. The dialogue is rich, the discourse ongoing. Thank you once again for joining us for another episode of Philosophical Flicks. Your continued support of this channel is greatly appreciated. We look forward to seeing you in the next video, and until then, as always, take care of yourselves and each other.